Can I get a mic or a mic and a half? That the source owe me. Shout out to the editor staff. Yeah, I'm all grown, so much better with math. I need a spread in the Forbes, taking the Benjamin bath. Yeah, I'm serving this track like Steffi Graf. Yeah, Roger Federer, there's no competitor.
Urban Tennis, Episode 8, Monday Night Tennis. Welcome back, everyone. I'm the host of the Urban Tennis Podcast, joined by my co-host.
How do you do?
Spectacularly. This week, we're going to wrap up all things US Open. We'll talk about the men's side, specifically Rafael Nadal's run. The women's side, talk about Serena-Vika. We'll have our thoughts about the USTA and their upcoming changes and their scheduling. And we'll assess the US Open app. So, everyone, let's get started. Episode 8. The summer of Rafa has come to an end, and he's perfect through it. An incredible run from Montreal to Cincinnati to New York led Rafael Nadal to a 4-set win, his 13th Grand Slam, and his second U.S. Open title. So I turn it over to my co-host. What are your initial thoughts on the Rafa win, and what impressed you most about his victory?
My initial thoughts is that, without a doubt, this is the best I've ever seen Nadal play on hard court. I haven't seen him play any better in his entire career. I mean, early on in his career, he has struggled in hard court, and now it felt like this was absolutely perfection. When he was on, he was on. I mean, we especially saw in the final, which my thoughts coming out of that final were like, all right, this is the greatest 4-set match I've seen in my life. You think that may be an exaggeration, but if you think about it, I don't think it is. We saw that 54-shot rally. We saw Nadal sliding up and down the court, like he was like owning that hard court. So like it was just magical.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The changes that Rafa made, even subtly, the things that the TV crews would demonstrate, how he would move up on the baseline, even compared to his winning season in 2010, were tremendous. His serve wasn't as big this year, but he was definitely in better position, and his forehand was as lethal as possible. And as you were saying, I don't know if it's the best 4-set match I've ever seen. I think probably Agassi-Sampras in 0-1. And those tie-break sets are probably the best I see, but it was a match that had some great moments in it, but it was kind of underwhelming in the 4th set just because it felt like Novak had, lost any momentum or really any push that he had. But something that really drew my attention was Rafael Nadal during his very rushed on-court interview. Thank you, CBS. Was that Novak really brings the best out of him. Do you tend to agree with that statement, or are we overlooking other opponents that may have brought the best out of Rafa before?
Well, I think in terms of 2013, then you have to say, yeah, Novak brings the best out of Nadal. But I think, of course, lifetime, you can't ignore Federer. That's a given. But yeah, I mean, Murray also has good matches with them. You also had good matches with other people, other top ranked players. Like, you had good matches usually against guys with big serves.
Yeah, I think so. But the key issue is if a match involves Rafa, he provides so many dynamic matchup issues that no one else does. A lefty, topspin, that incredible, the fortitude to fight for every point. So even really when he develops a rivalry with anyone, it's because of the fact that he's such a different, diametrically opposed player to that opponent that it's naturally very interesting. At 13 slams, I know we don't like to project, but can you confidently think that Rafa has more Grand Slams? I mean, multiple Grand Slams in him and slams outside the French Open still in him?
Well, I think it's always tough. I mean, Rafa, a lot of people thought he couldn't win, was probably only going to win the French this year coming into it, because you always have to be the favorite there. But Rafa's he's tough to predict. I mean, but this year he just turned it on to 11. Other than Wimbledon, which is just a complete aberration. Every other tournament he played this year, he looked like he was heads and shoulders above the rest of the field. I mean, it wasn't even close in his early round matches.
Yeah, no, I remember I put up a poll on the blog earlier this year, and many agreed that he'd win Roland Garros just because it was on clay and that he's so damn good on it, but not a lot of faith in what he could do outside of clay. But I can think that really there's nothing that, there's always a variable of the knees, but there's nothing indicating to me in a competitive sense that Rafa will not compete and Rafa will not win more slams beside the French Open. Shifting more to those who didn't have great weeks, the disappointments on the men's side. And I really want to pick on Juan Martín del Potro, who went out in the second round to Leighton Hewitt. Leighton Hewitt pulled off a huge victory. But have we really just, really seen the peak of Juan Martín del Potro? And should we never kind of expect him to be a deep contender every slam? He's just either his body's not up to it mentally, or the fact that, he doesn't have a great record amongst the top four. So are we wrong in pushing him all the time, or do you think he still is a viable option?
Well, option A and B combined, I'm going to make option C. I mean, Del Potro definitely has a great all-around game, and there's no doubting that. But it's hard to reach over this hump in this what people are calling another golden age in tennis. When Del Potro would definitely be a very successful player in many eras, and he is a successful player. I mean, he has a Grand Slam. Very few players can say that. It's just so difficult to compete in today's tennis environment, where you have to go through Djokovic, you have to go through Murray's, you have to go through Nadal's, and then on top of that, you have guys like Leighton Hewitt, a former Grand Slam champion, even in his end of his career, it seems like, can still pull off a great match like that. It's just so tough for Del Potro, I think. I think it's a little unfortunate. I think he's kind of similar to like an Andy Roddick. I think he's a similar career path to him.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison with Andy Roddick. He was somebody that, obviously reached slam finals but couldn't do it. I think Del Potro is going to need to, he's either going to need the breaks fall his way in a tournament, or he's going to need to find that extra variable that allows him to compete deeper. Whether that's just staying healthy, we don't know. I think we want to move on to the women's side, where we had Serena Williams win her 5th U.S. Open and her 17th Grand Slam. But more interesting was that 2 years in a row, we've now had pretty good finals against Vika Azarenka. So is it a fair statement to say that Serena-Vika is a legitimate rivalry?
I think without a doubt, you have to say Serena-Vika is a legitimate rivalry. I think if you need to have a rivalry in tennis. I mean, that's just a fact of life. And Serena has a much better record compared to other top players on tour. And it's not even just a record. It's just, you look at the match quality that you get that Azarenka gets out of Serena. Even a tournament where a lot of people were doubting Azarenka, they thought she could lose 6-2, 6-1, and then like some low numbers like that. So Azarenka finds a way to get the best out of Serena. I think it was her ability to play well in those conditions, the windy Arthur Ashe on Sunday. And moving on, so do you think Serena has talked about she wants to make her place in history. She wants to get these records. But do you think that her golden opportunity in her prime years, even if you say her prime years are still happening, has passed her by?
Yeah, this may be one of the biggest what-ifs in women's tennis. Has Serena already squandered her opportunities, whether it be the injuries, whether it be the years that she really, wasn't that focused on tennis? But we see now at nearly 32, she's so keen and so focused on the game that you kind of really, you have to ask the what if. What if Serena was like this, say 5 years earlier, 7 years earlier? Would she be nearing 22 already? So I'm going to lean towards I am encouraged that, the last maybe year or two she has left on tour. She's going to be at Grand Slam form. But then obviously for any fan or any tennis historian, the what if will always be in the back of my head.
Oh, yeah. I think a new young player can explode on the tour at any time, and that could definitely spoil Serena's championship goals at this time. And we're going to move on now. We're going to talk about the scheduling. We touched upon it. We had a Sunday women's final this year and a planned Monday men's final. So what are some thoughts about that? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think they should change that? And what do you think the USTA should do?
Well, I know Twitter is never the greatest barometer, but there was a lot of uproar right before the start of the men's final that why is the USTA doing a final at 5 p.m. when the West Coast is still at work? In Europe, it's nearly midnight. But I think it went well. They never have thought that the first year it's planned that the weekend didn't have any rain at all. So there would have been no need necessarily. But I think the players liked it. And I think until the ESPN move in a couple of years in 2015, when they will probably go back to Saturday-Sunday final and more like Wimbledon and the French Open, it was the best for the players. And I think, the match we saw out of Novak was probably higher quality than we would have seen if he had to come back right after his 5-setter.
Oh yeah, and this is a little bit biased, being in the same time zone as US Open, but we kind of made the best of it. Like after 5 o'clock, we met up with a few people. We watching tennis in a bar, which is the first time I've ever done that. But it was kind of exciting, hanging out with other people and watching tennis at the same time, which can be a challenge to do when you're most of the time being such an international sport. You're watching tennis like in the morning, late at night. So watching after work, when a lot of people, or at least when a lot of people are after work, was pretty cool.
We haven't talked about, but before the tournament, the USTA did announce that a roof would come to Ash, a newly built Armstrong Stadium with the roof. They'd move grandstand. Obviously, positive steps that other slams are taking too. But what are your thoughts? Have they done enough to assess and resolve these problems, or will Ash and maybe the entire U.S. Open setup always be a point of criticism?
Well, I'm by no means am I an architect, a geologist, or any of those things. So I don't really know what made the USTA change the position on building a roof now. So I think, without a doubt, for the viewing audience, which is probably 90% of the people, and even the live crowd, they're gonna like the fact that tennis will always be played as long as there is tennis that has to be played. So I think it'll be positive. I think the only people who will have criticisms are people, and then I think the New York City taxpayers who may not like tennis and have to support this project now. So yeah, we don't want to get into politics here, though.
Well, yeah, there's always going to be positive and negatives. Ash is never going to be center court at Wimbledon. It's never going to have that moniker, but at times, there's no better place than Ash to have a match. Moving on to our technology segment, what we like to do at Grand Slams is download the apps, whether that be the iOS or the Android system. And now we have a chance. 2 weeks have passed. And assessing the U.S. Open, and specifically what they tried to do with the Trendcast, where they basically had a tab in the app where it listed all the trends, social media trends, that were going on in the U.S. Open, so people, were not lost on what hashtags to use and what really things were buzzing. So what do you think, or what were your impressions of the U.S. Open app?
It was okay. I wouldn't say it was my favorite app here. I think that still goes to the All England Lawn and Tennis Clubs app, which is Wimbledon. The one thing I did like these features. I mean, it was pretty interesting to get the headlines right away. But I also wanted to know what the score was more clearly. It was when you open up the app, you see the score in like a box in the top right corner. I like it when I can see there's a tab where I can see all the scores at once. And that's something I liked about the Wimbledon app versus the US Open app.
Well, yeah, I tend to agree. I think I like the Trendcast because I never seemed lost in terms of what hashtags to use. But the scores could have been clear. But I think that leads into the next part of our discussion where what are some of the next steps you want to see? We've seen the 4 Grand Slam apps this year. What other steps can be taken? And right away, I thought of maybe better integration of video, because I know Instagram has video, Vine has video. If we can start integrating that kind of, those quick segments of video, and also a better live blog feature. I think any live blog is so common now, but if you can really, have a very colorful one on the app, it'll be a destination for a lot of tennis fans.
Yeah, I may be a little unrelated, but similar. I think the US Open Twitter account, I think they need to tweet a little more during the tournament. I find if I'm out and I still want to follow some scores as they're going on, I think they need to post more scores as the matches are going on. So,
yeah, that's a fair point. Regularity and updates, that's something people are looking for. We're almost nearing episode 8, but like always, we like to end with a couple of games. So first, we'll do a game of volleys, which is essentially this or that. We'll put 2 things in the tennis world. This week, obviously, the U.S. Open, and we'll see which one we prefer or which one we will choose. So first up, who had the better surprise or first-time U.S. Open semifinal run? Stanislas Wawrinka or Flavia Pennetta?
I'm going to say Wawrinka. I'm going to go with Wawrinka because nobody really gave him the respect that I think he probably deserved from fans, because he's like the second Swiss player. And Switzerland being such a small country, Wawrinka was always going to be in Federer's shadow. So him doing well in this tournament and having that classic 5-set match with Djokovic is definitely going to help his legacy in the future, if he's thinking about that.
I'm going to gravitate more to Flavia Panetta's story, because it was really, really interesting to learn while she progressed in this tournament how much other players on the WTA really admired her. Somebody in the locker room that they felt was dignified and a real representation of what a WTA tennis player was. And the story where last year she had the injury, much like Rafael Nadal, couldn't compete, ranked 83rd, made it to the semis. That's a tremendous result. Okay, our next volley will be, who do you think is the better late-night U.S. Open showman? The Frenchman Gael Monfils or the recently retired James Blake?
I'm going to go with Gael Monfils. I mean, James Blake is one of my favorite players to watch on the tour, but Monfils was able to turn that crowd fully in his favor. Even fans who may not even be that familiar with Monfils, once he stepped on the court in that Isner match, people were like fully supporting him. Like I said this during the match, once Monfils retires, he's going to make a killing off just playing exhibition matches.
Yeah, I think he's going to be comfortable in doing anything tennis exhibition. But I'm going to go with James Blake. Year in, year out, for those couple of years in the mid-2000s, he was a marquee man. And his battles late night were things of modern-day tennis legends. So James Blake, you get my vote. One of the cooler things of the U.S. Open is a lot of celebrity sightings. So we thought, let's do this. What celebrity would you rather sit beside at a U.S. Open finals? Would it be Sean Connery, Sir Sean Connery, or comedian, actor, creator Ben Stiller?
I'd have to say Sean Connery, because if I had the guts, I would ask him, what do you think was the match? And I hope his response would be, I'm waiting to be impressed. Which
I'm going to also go with Sean Connery, but more because when I like to watch tennis, I like to be quiet and I like to focus on the thing. And I would think Sean Connery would respect the players, where Ben Stiller might be a little, talky and stuff. And I'll save that for the after the match. Moving on, our social media highlight of the week, brought to you by our co-host.
Well, the social media highlight of the week goes out to a Swiss newspaper which printed a nice comic, and then we'll post a link on the blog post, which compares Federer, which is a Swiss knight, how he had the early round exit, and then not to fear, because Iron Stan is here.
Definitely, that was really, really fun and almost a Swiss version of the Avengers. That was our quick recap of the U.S. Open. For more, keep reading the blog. But as always, thank you for listening. Episode 8, Monday Night Tennis.